The moment the front door clicked shut, my entire world shattered into pieces. I stood in my sister's living room, listening to the taxi pull away from the curb. Brooke and Jared were gone, off to their Caribbean cruise, 5 days of sunshine and umbrella drinks while I babysat their daughter. I turned around with a smile, ready to ask Nola what she wanted to do first. Maybe we could bake cookies, watch a movie, read together like we always did. But Nola wasn't reaching for her iPad. She wasn't typing out a message for the text-to-speech app to read aloud. She was just standing there, staring at me with an intensity I had never seen in her 8 years of life. And then my niece, the child I believed was born mute, the little girl who hadn't made a single sound since she was a toddler, opened her mouth. "Auntie, don't drink the tea Mom made. She plotted something bad." Her voice was clear, perfect, like she'd been speaking her whole life. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. Let me back up about 6 hours because I need you to understand how I got here, how I ended up standing in my sister's house, discovering that everything I thought I knew about my family was a carefully constructed lie. My name is Lisa Rames. I'm 32 years old. I work as an accountant at a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio. Exciting stuff, I know. While other people dream about exotic vacations and romantic adventures, I dream about perfectly balanced spreadsheets. My therapist says I use numbers to feel in control. My therapist is probably right. That morning started normally enough. Saturday, coffee, quiet apartment. I was actually enjoying the peace when my phone rang. Brooke, my older sister, 6 years between us, but sometimes it felt like 60. Her voice was honey sweet, which should have been my first warning sign. Brooke only used that voice when she wanted something. "Lisa, I have the biggest favor to ask." Turns out she and Jared had booked an anniversary cruise. 5 days, Caribbean, very romantic, very last minute, and they needed someone to watch Nola. "Of course," I said, because that's what I always said to Brooke. I'd love to spend time with her, and I meant it. I genuinely adored my niece. Even though communicating through an iPad was sometimes exhausting, there was something special about Nola. She had these big, watchful eyes that seemed to absorb everything. When I read to her, she'd lean against my shoulder, and I could feel her relaxing, like my voice was a safe place. See, Nola was born with a rare condition. At least, that's what Brooke always told everyone. Something neurological that affected her ability to speak. The doctors caught it when she was about 3, Brooke said. Nothing could be done. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my sister. Mothers know their children. Besides, I wasn't around much during Nola's early years. I'd taken a job in Chicago right after she was born. Good opportunity, couldn't pass it up. I'd fly home for Christmas, maybe a weekend here and there. By the time Nola was 3, she was already silent. Brooke had already crafted the whole narrative. I moved back to Ohio 2 years ago when our mom got sick. Cancer, the slow, terrible kind. I wanted to be closer, wanted to help. During those months, I started spending more time with Nola, reading to her, bringing her books, just being present. Even without words, we built something real. Our dad, Harold, had died 3 years before Mom. Heart disease. He was the quiet, steady type, the kind of man who fixed things and didn't complain. After he was gone, it felt like the family lost its anchor. When Mom finally passed 14 months ago, she left behind a trust, about $1.2 million, their entire life savings, Dad's life insurance, everything. The terms were clear. Both Brooke and I had to sign for any major withdrawals. Mom was smart that way. She also left me the family home since Brooke already owned property. At the time, I thought it was fair. Now I wonder if Mom knew something I didn't. Anyway. Back to that Saturday morning, I drove over to Brooke's house around noon. Nice place. Big lawn. The kind of house that looks like a magazine cover. Brooke greeted me at the door with a hug, which was unusual. My sister wasn't really a hugger. "You're a lifesaver, Lisa, truly." She looked perfect, as always. Hair done, nails done, designer luggage waiting by the door. Jared was loading bags into the taxi that had just arrived. He barely looked at me. Just a quick wave, a mumbled hello. He seemed nervous, sweaty, but Jared was always kind of twitchy. I didn't think much of it. Brooke walked me through the house like I'd never been there before. Here's the kitchen. Here's Nola's room. Here's the remote for the TV. And then she opened the refrigerator and pulled out a large thermos with a yellow lid. "I made this for you," she said, pressing it into my hands. "Herbal tea for stress. You look tired, Lisa." "You've been working too hard." Something about the way she said it felt off, too insistent. But I smiled and thanked her, because that's what I did with Brooke. I smiled and thanked her and never pushed back. She had always been the one with the solutions, even when I didn't ask for them. When I went through a bad breakup at 25, Brooke's prescription was lavender oil, green juice, and a vision board covered in George Clooney pictures. "Manifest your future husband," she'd said. I still have trust issues with vision boards. The taxi honked. Brooke hugged me again. 2 hugs in one day, definitely weird, and rushed out the door. Jared followed without a word. I watched them climb into the car, watched it pull away. Then I closed the front door, turned around, and found Nola standing there, looking at me like she was about to tell me the world was ending. "Auntie, don't drink the tea Mom made. She plotted something bad." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The thermos was still in my hands, suddenly feeling like a bomb. My niece, who I believed was born mute, had just spoken to me in a perfect, clear voice, and she was warning me that my own sister was trying to poison me. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment, and your support truly means the world to me. Now, back to what happened next. I set the thermos down on the counter like it was radioactive. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. Then I turned back to Nola and sank down to my knees, bringing myself to her eye level. "Nola," I whispered, you can talk?" She nodded. Her eyes were huge, scared, but there was something fierce in them too, something determined. "I always could, Auntie. Mommy made me stop." The room tilted. I had to put a hand on the floor to steady myself. "What do you mean, made you stop?" And that's when my 8-year-old niece told me a story that ripped apart everything I thought I knew about my family. Nola wasn't born mute. She never had a neurological condition. That was a lie my sister had been telling for 5 years. Until she was 3, Nola talked like any normal toddler. She said her first words, learned new ones every day, sang songs, asked a million questions, said, "I love you" at bedtime. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Nola was playing upstairs in her room. She got thirsty, so she crept downstairs to get some juice. Mommy was in the kitchen, talking on the phone. She didn't notice the little girl standing in the doorway. Nola heard words. Most of them she didn't understand, but some of them she recognized. Aunt Lisa, money, out of the picture. When Daddy's gone, then Mom, and then we get everything. She trusts me completely. She's so stupid. Nola was 3 years old. She didn't know what out of the picture meant, but she understood Aunt Lisa, and she understood the mean, cold way her mommy said, "stupid." The next day, innocent and confused, Nola asked her mother, "Mommy, what does out of the picture mean?" Brooke's face went cold. She grabbed Nola's arms, too hard, leaving little bruises, and knelt down until they were face to face. "Listen to me very carefully," she said. "If you ever speak again, to anyone, about anything, something terrible will happen to Aunt Lisa. Your voice is dangerous. Every word you say hurts her. If you love your auntie, you'll never make another sound. Do you understand?" Nola loved me. I was the aunt who brought her picture books, the one who smiled at her like she was the most special thing in the world. So Nola stopped talking. She was 3 years old. She made a decision to give up her voice, to protect me. I sat there on Brooke's kitchen floor, tears streaming down my face, as this child explained the sacrifice she'd made. 5 years. 5 years of silence. 5 years of terror, thinking that every word she spoke might hurt the person she loved most. And Brooke, my sister, the devoted mother, had used that fear. She took Nola to doctors, played concerned parent, collected her selective mutism diagnosis, but she told everyone something different. Neurological, born with it, nothing to be done. She made sure no one saw the real medical records. I was in Chicago, visiting twice a year. I had no reason to doubt my own sister about her own daughter. That crystal plaque on the mantle caught my eye. Mother of the Year. Brooke won it from the community center 2 years ago. Everyone praised her patience, her dedication to her special needs child. I suddenly wanted to throw that plaque into the sun and watch it burn. "What else do you know, sweetheart?" I asked gently. What else have you seen? It turned out that being silent made Nola invisible. Adults forgot she was there. They talked freely around her, assuming she couldn't understand or couldn't tell anyone even if she did. Nola saw everything. She saw her mother practicing my signature over and over on scrap paper until it looked almost right. She heard phone conversations about the trust and transferring everything, and before Lisa figures it out, she watched her father become more and more afraid of her mother, agreeing to everything, never questioning anything. She observed her mother perform for neighbors, church friends, teachers, the perfect mask of a loving parent making sacrifices for her disabled daughter. And 2 nights ago, Nola heard something that made her realize she couldn't stay silent anymore. She'd crept to the top of the stairs, like she'd done hundreds of times before. Her parents were in the kitchen, planning. The tea will make her sick enough for the ER, Brooke said. Not dangerous, just severe stomach problems, extreme drowsiness. She'll be out for days. What about Nola while we're gone? Jared asked. Mrs. Patterson next door will take her. I already told her Lisa has episodes sometimes. She bought it completely. And while Lisa's in the hospital, we drive to Indianapolis. There's a lawyer there who doesn't know her. I have all the forged papers ready. We transfer the entire trust to my name. By the time Lisa recovers, it's done. She'll never be able to prove anything. No cruise, no Caribbean vacation. Just a scheme to poison me, forge my signature, and steal over $1 million. My own sister. I pulled Nola into my arms and held her tight. This brave, incredible child. She carried this weight for 5 years. She watched her mother lie to everyone, and when it truly mattered, she found the courage to break her silence. You saved me, I whispered into her hair. You know that, right? You saved my life. She hugged me back, small arms fierce around my neck. I couldn't let Mommy hurt you, Annie, not anymore. I looked over at the thermos sitting on the counter, innocent looking, yellow lid, homemade tea from my loving sister. Evidence. My tears stopped. Something cold and focused settled in my chest. Brooke thought she had 5 days to steal everything. She thought I'd be lying in a hospital bed too sick to stop her. She was very, very wrong. The first call I made was to Gwen Mercer. Gwen and I met in college. She went into nursing, I went into accounting. Different paths, but we stayed close. She was the kind of friend who showed up with ice cream during breakups and told you the truth even when it hurt. I trusted her completely. She answered on the second ring. Lisa, what's up? Gwen, I need you to come to Brooke's house, right now. Something happened and I can't explain it over the phone. Please, just come. Something in my voice must have scared her. She didn't ask questions. On my way. 40 minutes later, she was at the door, still in scrubs from her shift, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. Talk to me? So I did. All of it. The tea, the scheme, and Nola, sweet, silent Nola, who had spoken for the first time in 5 years to warn me. When I finished, Gwen was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked over at Nola, who was sitting on the couch watching us with those big, serious eyes. Gwen walked over and knelt down in front of her. You're the bravest kid I've ever met, she said softly. You know that? Nola almost smiled. Gwen stood up. All business now. Okay, first things first. That tea needs to be tested. I know someone at the hospital lab. She can run a rush analysis tonight. If there's anything wrong with it, we'll know by morning. She pulled on latex gloves. She actually had some in her purse, because of course she did, and carefully took a sample from the thermos, sealed it in a small container. What kind of person poisons tea? She muttered, shaking her head. I always knew Brooke was off. Remember when she told you that haircut made your face look less round? That wasn't a compliment. That was psychological warfare in sister format. I almost laughed. Almost. Now, Gwen continued, what else do you have? There's got to be more evidence if she's been running this scam. I looked at Nola. Honey, you said you know where Mommy keeps important papers? She nodded and climbed off the couch. In the office. There's a locked drawer. I know the code. How do you know the code? I watched her type it. Lots of times, she never noticed me. A small, sad pause. Nobody ever notices the quiet kid. She led us to Brooke's home office, a neat, carefully decorated room that looked like it belonged in a magazine. There was a large desk with a computer, filing cabinets, and one drawer with a digital lock. 0315, Nola said. March 15th, their wedding anniversary. Of course. Brooke would use something sentimental. Made her feel clever. I punched in the code. The drawer clicked open. What we found inside made my stomach turn. First, bank authorization forms with my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close. Really close, but I could see the difference immediately. The loop on my capital L was wrong. Anyone who knew my handwriting would notice. Brooke had practiced, but she wasn't perfect. Second, bank statements from the trust account. 14 months of activity. Withdrawal after withdrawal, always in amounts under $15,000, just below the threshold that would trigger automatic reporting to federal authorities. Brooke had done her research. The total, roughly $180,000. Gone. Stolen by my own sister, while I trusted her completely. Third, printed emails between Brooke and an attorney in Indianapolis named Warren Drucker. They discussed emergency transfer of trust assets and referenced my mental instability and inability to manage finances. The meeting was scheduled for day 4, exactly when the cruise was supposed to be in full swing. Fourth, and this one nearly broke me, a file labeled Lisa Mental Health Concerns. Inside were pages of notes in Brooke's handwriting, dated entries describing my erratic behavior, my depression, my paranoid episodes, complete fabrications, all of it. She was building a paper trail, preparing to paint me as mentally unfit in case I ever challenged the fraud. My own sister was planning to call me crazy, to destroy my credibility, to take everything and leave me with nothing, not even my reputation. Gwen photographed every single document, every page, every date. This is premeditated fraud, she said grimly. This isn't some impulsive thing. She's been planning this for over a year. I was already organizing the information in my head, accountant brain kicking in, dates, patterns, the amount withdrawn each month, the signatures that didn't quite match. Numbers don't lie. And these numbers told a very clear story. Then Gwen's phone buzzed. Her contact at the lab, working the overnight shift, had rushed the tea analysis. The results, a concentrated combination of a powerful laxative compound and a sedative herb, not lethal, but absolutely incapacitating. Anyone who drank it would be violently ill and barely conscious for 48 to 72 hours. Hospital level sick. Exactly like Nola said, Brooke wasn't trying to kill me. She was too smart for that. She just needed me out of commission long enough to steal everything. I thought about my emergency savings account, $8,000 tucked away in a separate bank that nobody knew about. A financial advisor told me years ago to always have walk-away money. I'd followed that advice quietly, never mentioning it to family. Now that money was going to fund my fight. Sometimes boring financial planning saves your life. There was one more call to make. Kevin Calloway. We were in the same study group in college. He went to law school while I went into accounting. Now he was an assistant prosecutor in Franklin County. I called him, explained everything. When I finished, there was a long silence. Lisa, he finally said, this is fraud, forgery, attempted poisoning, and what your sister did to that child. Coercive control, psychological abuse. That's serious, very serious. What do? You let me handle the legal side. I'll coordinate with local police and reach out to the FBI. This crosses state lines, which makes it federal. We'll contact the Indianapolis lawyer too. He might be an unwitting participant, or he might be in on it. Either way, we find out. And Brooke, she can't know you're onto her. If she gets spooked, she could disappear with whatever money she has access to. You need to make her think her plan is working perfectly. I looked at the thermos, still sitting on the kitchen counter. I had to pretend I drank it. Pretend I was sick, pretend I was helpless and incapacitated while my sister drove to Indianapolis to rob me. 3 days of acting. The performance of my life. I can do that, I said, and I meant it. Day 2. Time to become an actress. I sat in Brooke's living room, staring at my phone. Nola was beside me on the couch, quiet but watchful. Old habits die hard. Even now that she could speak freely, she still observed everything with those careful eyes. I dialed Brooke's number, It went straight to voicemail, which I expected. If she was really on a cruise, she'd have limited cell service. Of course, she wasn't on a cruise. She was in a hotel in Indianapolis, preparing to steal my inheritance. But I had to play along. I made my voice weak, shaky, pathetic, the kind of voice someone uses when they're barely holding it together. Brooke, something's really wrong. I've been so sick all night, throwing up, dizzy. I can barely stand. I think I need to go to the hospital. Nola's okay. Mrs. Patterson can take her if I have to go to the ER. I'm so sorry to ruin your trip. I'll figure it out. I hung up. My hands were steady. My heart was cold. Gwen, who was sitting across from me, gave me a thumbs up. Oscar-worthy performance. Really, the quiver in your voice at the end? Chef's kiss. Thanks. I learned from watching Brooke fake emotions my whole life. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. A text from Brooke. Not a call. Not a worried voicemail demanding to know which hospital. Not a frantic message asking to speak to her daughter. A text. Oh no. Feel better soon. Don't worry about Nola. Mrs. P is great with kids. Rest up and take care of yourself. See you in a few days. I stared at that pink heart emoji for a long time. My sister might have poisoned me. She was actively planning to steal over $1 million from me, and her response was a cartoon heart and an exclamation point. I've seen people put more effort into responding to a wrong number text. At least throw in a concerned face emoji, Brooke. Show some range. She didn't even ask about the hospital, Gwen said, reading over my shoulder. Didn't ask which one. Didn't offer to come home. Didn't ask to talk to Nola. Nope. Your sister is actually a sociopath. I'm starting to think actual sociopaths try harder than this. Over the next few hours, Gwen's husband, who worked in IT, gave us a quick lesson in social media tracking. Turns out Jared wasn't as careful as Brooke. His Instagram still had location services enabled. He'd posted a selfie at a coffee shop yesterday morning, grinning like an idiot. Geotagged to Indianapolis, Indiana. No beach, no cruise ship, no Caribbean sunset. They were exactly where Nola said they'd be. While Gwen worked on tracking their digital footprint, I went back to the evidence drawer. There had to be more. Brooke was meticulous. She kept records of everything. I found them at the bottom, underneath a stack of old tax returns. Letters, handwritten, dated during our mother's final months. My hands trembled as I read them. They were from Brooke to our mother, Patricia, written while Mom was dying of cancer, while she was weak and scared and fighting for every breath. In these letters, Brooke begged, no, demanded, that Patricia change the will, leave everything to Brooke alone, cut me out completely. Lisa is single. She doesn't have responsibilities like I do. I have a daughter to raise. I need this money. You always favored her anyway. This is your chance to finally make things right. If you ever loved me, you'll do this. The manipulation, the guilt, the cruelty of pressuring a dying woman. And then I found Mom's response, handwritten on her personal stationery. The handwriting was shaky. She was so weak by then, but the words were strong. I will not punish Lisa for being responsible. I will not reward you for being greedy. The trust stays equal. This discussion is over. Do not bring this up again. I love you, but I am disappointed in who you've become. Mom, Patricia refused. Even on her deathbed, she protected me. So Brooke waited. She waited for our mother to die. And then she started forging. I sat there on the floor of that perfect home office, holding my mother's final words in my hands, and I cried. Not for myself, for Mom, for the betrayal she saw in her own daughter before the end. Auntie? Nola's small voice. She'd come to the doorway. Yes, sweetheart? Are those letters from Grandma? Yes. She walked over and sat down next to me on the floor. Her little hand found mine. Grandma told me something once, she said quietly. When Mommy wasn't in the room, she said, watch your mama, little one. Something's wrong in her heart. I thought she meant Mommy was sick, like with her actual heart. I didn't understand. I think Grandma knew, I said. She always saw people clearly. Do you think she knew about me? That I wasn't really mute? I thought about my mother, sharp until the end, observant, the kind of woman who noticed everything but chose her battles carefully. "I think," I said slowly, "that Grandma trusted me to figure it out eventually, and she trusted you to be brave when it mattered." Nola squeezed my hand. That evening, Kevin Calloway called with updates. The legal machinery was moving faster than I expected. Local police were fully briefed. Given the evidence of fraud, forgery, and attempted poisoning, they were taking this seriously. The FBI had been consulted. Interstate wire fraud, transferring money across state lines through deceptive means, was a federal offense. Brooke had made this a federal case all by herself. And the Indianapolis lawyer, Warren Drucker, Kevin's contacts had reached out to him. Turns out, Drucker had been having doubts. The signatures on the authorization forms looked slightly off to him. He was already considering canceling the meeting. When authorities explained what was actually happening, he agreed to cooperate fully. The sting was set for day 4. When Brooke and Jared walked into that law office expecting to complete their theft, police would be waiting. "Your job," Kevin reminded me, "is to keep pretending, keep sending sick updates, make her believe everything is going according to plan." So I did. Day 2 text. "Still so sick. The doctor thinks maybe food poisoning. So strange. Nola is being wonderful with Mrs. Patterson." Day 3 text. "Barely keeping water down. So weak. Don't cut your trip short. I'll be fine. Just need rest." Each message, I imagined Brooke reading it, smiling, thinking her stupid, trusting sister was exactly where she wanted her. That same day, Kevin arranged for a child advocacy specialist to take Nola's statement. It had to be done properly, videotaped, with a child psychologist present, following all legal protocols for minor witnesses. Nola was nervous. She sat in a chair that was too big for her, feet dangling above the floor. But when the questions started, she sat up straight. She used her voice, still new, still strange, after 5 years of silence, and told them everything. What she heard when she was 3, the threats, the fear, the decision to stop speaking, the years of watching and listening, the night she overheard the plan about the tea. When it was over, she looked at me through the observation window. "That's the most I've talked since I was 3, she said. "My voice is tired, but it feels good, like I've been holding my breath underwater for years, and I finally came up for air. I wanted to run in there and hold her, but I had to wait. Protocols. When they finally let me see her, I hugged her so tight I probably squeezed the air right back out. 1 more day, I told her. Just 1 more day and this is over." She nodded against my shoulder. 1 more day. Day 4. Indianapolis, Indiana, 10:15 in the morning. Warren Drucker's law office. 3rd floor of a professional building with a nice view of downtown that nobody was going to enjoy today. I wasn't there in person. Kevin set up a secure video feed so I could watch from Brooke's living room. Nola sat beside me, holding my hand. Gwen was on my other side. We watched the lobby camera as Brooke and Jared walked through the front door. Brooke looked perfect. Professional dress, modest jewelry, concerned expression carefully arranged on her face. She was carrying a leather folder, the same one from her office, I realized, full of forged documents and stolen dreams. Jared looked like he was going to be sick, sweating through his nice shirt, eyes darting around the lobby. He knew something was wrong with this whole scheme. He'd always known, but he was too weak, too scared of his wife to stop it. They approached the receptionist, smiled, gave their names. The receptionist smiled back and led them down a hallway, toward the conference room, where 3 people were waiting. Brooke walked in first, confident, ready to close the deal on the biggest theft of her life. Warren Drucker sat at the head of the table, gray-haired, serious. He didn't smile when she entered, didn't stand to shake her hand. 2 other people sat at the table, a man and a woman, plain clothes, professional. Brooke hesitated in the doorway. "I thought this was a private meeting," she said. That honey, sweet voice again, the one she used when she sensed something was off. Drucker's response was flat. "Mrs. Whitford, please have a seat. These are Detectives Morrison and Park. They have some questions about the documentation you've submitted." Through the video feed, I watched my sister's face, the flicker of confusion, the quick calculation behind her eyes, the decision to brazen it out. She sat down, crossed her legs, folded her hands on the table. "Of course, whatever I can help with. Is there some problem with the paperwork?" Detective Morrison was calm, almost friendly. She asked Brooke to confirm her identity, her relationship to me, her role as co-trustee of our parents' estate. Brooke confirmed everything, smooth, confident. She still thought she could talk her way out. Then Morrison placed 2 documents on the table, side by side. On the left, my signature from the forged authorization forms. On the right, my real signature from verified bank records. Mrs. Whitford, can you explain why these signatures don't match? For just a second, barely a heartbeat, I saw panic flash across Brooke's face. Then the mask slammed back down. My sister has very inconsistent handwriting. She's always been that way. And frankly, she's not, well, mentally. I have documentation about her instability. I can show you. Detective Park cut her off. We've reviewed your documentation. The notes about your sister's supposed mental health issues. He paused. Interesting thing. Her employer describes her as one of the most detail-oriented people they've ever worked with. Her doctor confirms she's in excellent mental and physical health. 3 colleagues provided statements calling her exceptionally stable and trustworthy. The mask was cracking. They don't see her like I do. Family knows the truth. Mrs. Whitford. Morrison's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath now. We have bank records showing $180,000 in unauthorized withdrawals over 14 months. We have email correspondence with this office discussing emergency trust transfers. We have forensic analysis of your sister's signatures proving forgery. She placed another document on the table. And we have lab results from the tea you prepared. A concentrated combination of sedatives and laxatives, enough to hospitalize someone for days. Jared made a small sound, like a wounded animal. Brooke was frozen. The honey-sweet expression was gone. What was left underneath was something cold and cornered. And then Morrison pulled out a tablet. There's one more piece of evidence we'd like you to hear. She pressed play. A child's voice filled the conference room. Clear, steady, unmistakable. Nola. My mommy told me when I was 3 that if I ever talked again, something bad would happen to Aunt Lisa. She said my voice was dangerous, that every word would hurt her. So I stopped talking. For 5 years to protect my aunt. The recording continued, Nola describing what she'd overheard, the phone call when she was 3, the night before the cruise. Every detail delivered in that careful, serious voice. I couldn't let Mommy hurt Auntie Lisa. She's the only one who ever really saw me. Even when I couldn't talk, she listened. The recording ended. Silence. And if this story has you on the edge of your seat right now, please take just 1 second to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means absolutely everything to me, and I read every single comment. Now let's finish this. Brooke stared at the tablet like it had grown teeth and bitten her. She's mute. She's been mute since she was 3 years old. She can't talk. This is fabricated. You fabricated. Mrs. Whitford. Detective Morrison's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. The gentleness made it worse. You just confirmed that you believed your daughter couldn't speak, but according to medical records, the real ones, not what you told your family, Nola was diagnosed with selective mutism, a psychological condition, often caused by trauma or fear. She let that sink in. Your daughter stopped speaking because you terrorized her into silence. For 5 years. That's child psychological abuse, added to fraud, forgery, and attempted poisoning. Brooke's face twisted. The mask didn't just crack, it shattered completely. What came out was ugly, raw, the real Brooke, finally visible. She was supposed to stay quiet. She was never supposed to. Brooke, Jared's voice, shaking. Stop talking. Just stop. He turned to the detectives. I want a lawyer, a separate lawyer. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. She planned all of it. The signatures, the transfers, the tea. I was scared of her. I'll testify. Whatever you need. Brooke turned on him with fury that made even the detectives tense. You pathetic coward! After everything I did for us! Mrs. Whitford, Detective Park stood. You're under arrest. Please stand and place your hands behind your back. They read her rights. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She was still talking, still trying to explain, to justify, to manipulate. but there was no one left to manipulate. Everyone in that room had seen the evidence. Everyone had heard her own daughter's testimony. She was led out of the conference room, out of the building, into a waiting police car. I watched through the video feed as my sister, the golden child, the perfect mother, the woman who had terrorized a 3-year-old into silence and tried to poison her own sister, disappeared into the back of that car. I felt Nola squeeze my hand. I looked down at her. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over." Gwen let out a long breath. "Well, I guess they'll want that Mother of the Year plaque back. Think we should mail it to her? At her new address? Behind bars?" I almost laughed. Almost. Justice was coming. But there was one more thing I needed to do. 2 weeks later. Franklin County Family Court. The courtroom was small, functional. Not the grand, dramatic space you see in movies. Just a room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs and a judge's bench that had seen 1,000 broken families. But today, something was being put back together. I sat at the front table in my best professional outfit, the same one I wore to important client meetings. This was more important than any client meeting I'd ever had. Nola sat beside me. She'd picked out her own dress that morning, purple, her favorite color. She'd brushed her own hair. She was nervous, I could tell. Her foot kept bouncing under the table. But she wasn't silent anymore. The judge reviewed the case file. Brooks' arrest, the fraud charges, the forgery, the attempted poisoning, the 5 years of psychological abuse inflicted on a child. Jared had signed away his parental rights in exchange for cooperation with prosecutors. He'd known about everything. He'd done nothing to stop it. He didn't deserve to be Nola's father, and somewhere in that weak, cowardly heart of his, he knew it. The judge looked up from the papers. He was an older man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I've reviewed the emergency custody petition," he said. "Given the circumstances, the arrest of the mother, the cooperation of the father, and the extensive documentation of psychological abuse, I'm prepared to rule." He turned to look at Nola directly, not at me, at her. "Young lady, I understand you've recently started speaking again after many years of silence. That took tremendous courage." Nola nodded. She was gripping my hand so tight I was losing circulation. "I'd like to ask you directly, in your own words, where would you like to live?" Nola looked at me, then at the judge, then back at me. And then she stood up, 8 years old, 4 feet tall, wearing a purple dress and more bravery than most adults ever manage. "I want to live with my Aunt Lassa," she said. Her voice was clear, strong, a voice she'd given up for 5 years to protect someone she loved. She's the only one who ever really saw me. Even when I couldn't talk, she listened. She read me books. She sat with me. She never made me feel like something was wrong with me. She paused, then added, "Also, she makes really good pancakes." Quiet laughter rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge smiled. He signed the papers. Emergency custody granted to Lisa Rames. Walking out of the courthouse, I couldn't stop looking at Nola. She was chattering away about the courtroom, about what she wanted for lunch, about a bird she saw on the window ledge, about whether we could get a dog someday. 5 years of silence. Now she couldn't stop talking, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That evening, we had dinner in my apartment. Our apartment now. I'd already started converting the spare room into Nola's bedroom. Purple walls, her choice, bookshelves everywhere, a cozy reading corner by the window. "Aunt Lisa?" she asked through a mouthful of pasta. "Yeah, sweetheart? Can I tell you about dinosaurs?" I smiled. "Absolutely." What followed was a 25-minute lecture on every dinosaur species Nola had ever read about, complete with detailed analysis of which ones would win in fights. Apparently, velociraptors are totally overrated because of movies, and T-Rex has unfair advantages because of media bias. The real winner, according to Nola, would be the Ankylosaurus, basically a tank with a built-in weapon. I nodded along seriously to all of it. I didn't need to understand dinosaur combat theory. I just needed to listen. Nola started therapy the following week, a specialist in childhood trauma. The sessions were hard sometimes. 5 years of fear and silence don't disappear overnight. There were bad days when she got quiet again, when the old terror crept back in. But there were more good days. Days when she laughed out loud. Days when she sang in the shower. Days when she came home from school bursting with stories about new friends who had never known her as the mute girl, just as Nola. Brooke faced multiple felony charges. The evidence was overwhelming. She took a plea deal to avoid trial. I didn't attend any of the hearings. I had better things to do. The trust fund was frozen and audited. Most of the stolen money was traced and recovered. I became sole trustee, managing it carefully for our future, mine and Nola's. I sold the family home. Too many memories there, complicated ones. I used part of the proceeds to start an education fund for Nola. The rest went into savings. Walk-away money, multiplied. Sometimes I think about my mother, about that letter she wrote to Brooke, standing firm even while cancer was taking her, about the quiet warning she whispered to her granddaughter, something's wrong in her heart. Patricia Rames saw the truth about her own daughter, and even in death, she protected the people who deserved protection. I like to think she'd be proud of how things turned out. Last Saturday morning, Nola and I had breakfast on my little apartment balcony. Nothing fancy, just pancakes and orange juice and early autumn sunshine. Nola was telling me about a dream she'd had, something about a penguin who could drive a car, a castle made entirely of waffles, and a very polite dragon named Gerald, who apologized every time he accidentally set something on fire. It made absolutely no sense. It was perfect. I sipped my coffee and listened, really listened. This is what family is supposed to sound like. Not silence, not lies, not manipulation and fear. Just this, a kid rambling about waffle castles, morning light through the trees, two people who chose each other sitting together, talking about nothing and everything. Nola paused mid-story and looked at me. Aunt Lisa, thank you for listening, for real listening, even when I couldn't talk. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Always, sweetheart, always. Sometimes the quietest people aren't weak. They're just waiting for someone they trust enough to finally speak. Nola found her voice, and I found my family. Some stories have happy endings. Ours was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You will love it. See you in the next story.